Your dog has been doing something extraordinary every single day of their life, and you have probably laughed at them for it. There is a 7-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback named Rigel who does something every morning that his owner, a single father named Joel who has not slept a full night in 4 years, has never stopped to question. Every morning, before the kids are up, before the coffee finishes brewing, before the world has fully started, Joel opens the back door, and Rigel steps into the yard. And then, Rigel begins to spin. Slowly, deliberately, like a creature performing a private ceremony no one else was invited to attend. Joel watches from the doorway with a half-smile. He always assumed Rigel was just being Rigel. He had no idea he was watching physics. For generations, we have had theories about why dogs spin before they squat. We told ourselves it was an old instinct, a throwback to wild days when they needed to flatten tall grass for a comfortable bed. Others guessed it was about chasing away insects or snakes hiding in the brush. Some said it was about spreading scent through their paw pads, marking the ground as their own. We came up with these explanations because the spinning seemed so silly, so unnecessary, so wonderfully, absurdly dog. And laughing felt easier than looking closer. But science looked closer, and what it found changed everything. When a dog spins before going to the bathroom or before curling up on the living room floor, they are not performing a quirk. They are executing a biological protocol of almost incomprehensible sophistication. Their brain is actively reaching out, invisibly, and feeling the magnetic field of the Earth. The same invisible web of energy that guides sea turtles across entire oceans and steers entire flocks of birds across continents. Your dog can feel that grid. They feel it every single day. And the spinning is how they read it. Think about that for just 1 second. The forces that move entire species across the face of the planet. Your dog feels them. In your backyard. Before breakfast. Picture a dog pressing their nose against the cold glass of a sliding door, watching the yard, waiting for the moment they are let outside. There is always something deliberate about that pause, something ancient. We just never knew what they were waiting for. In December of 2013, a team of researchers from the Czech Republic and Germany published a study in the journal Frontiers in Zoology that would quietly rewrite the story of every dog that ever spun in circles. They monitored 70 dogs across 37 different breeds. They were not inside controlled laboratories. They were outside, in open fields, with the dogs completely off-leash and free to face any direction they chose. Over 2 years, they recorded nearly 1,900 defecations and more than 5,500 urinations. They noted the time, the weather, the position of the sun, and the direction of the wind. And then they waited to see if any pattern emerged in which direction the dogs chose to face. At first, nothing. The data looked completely random. Dogs faced north, south, east, west, everywhere in between. The researchers must have felt that particular quiet despair that comes after 2 years of standing in fields watching dogs use the bathroom and seeing nothing conclusive. But then, one of them had an idea that changed the entire study. What if the Earth's magnetic field was not actually stable during those observations? Because here is something most of us never think about. The Earth's magnetic field is not a fixed, frozen thing. It is alive. It shifts and breathes, pulled by solar winds and flickering with micro-disturbances we cannot see or feel. And it turns out that for roughly 80% of the daytime hours, the field is in a state of subtle, constant fluctuation. Only about 20% of the day is it genuinely calm and still. When the researchers separated their data into 2 groups, the observations taken during unstable magnetic conditions and those taken during calm ones, something staggering emerged. During calm magnetic conditions, the dogs were not facing random directions at all. They were overwhelmingly, consistently, almost exclusively aligning their bodies along the north-south axis, heads pointing north or south, bodies aligned with the spine of the planet. And the moment the magnetic field became even slightly unstable, even by margins too small for any human instrument to easily detect, that alignment vanished completely. The dogs began facing random directions again, spinning and searching, unable to lock onto anything. They were not being stubborn when they spun in circles in the rain. They were trying to read a signal that had gone to static. Joel stands in his doorway on those chaotic school day mornings, the kind where someone has lost a shoe and someone else is crying about breakfast, and he watches Rigel spin. He has always gently teased his kids about it. He has always assumed the dog was just taking his sweet time. He never knew that Rigel was out there in the grass doing something no human being on Earth can do. Reading the planet. And what happens inside your dog's body at the exact moment they find the axis, when the invisible signal clicks into place and they finally stop spinning? That is where the story gets almost too beautiful to believe. Inside your dog's eye, right now, something is happening that Albert Einstein once called impossible. To understand why your dog spins, we had to look at what they are actually sensing and how they sense it. Because the Earth's magnetic field is almost unimaginably weak, it passes right through living tissue without leaving a mark. It does not push against nerve endings the way pressure does. It does not create vibration the way sound does. For a long time, physicists argued that a field so weak could not possibly alter the chemistry of a living organism, that any creature sensing it would be a biological miracle. Your dog is a biological miracle. The answer lives inside the eye itself. In 2016, researchers from the Max Planck Institute for Brain Research examined the retinas of 90 different mammalian species across 48 families. They were hunting for a specific molecule, one known to help migratory birds navigate by sensing magnetic fields. And what they found was both beautiful and precise. Dog-like carnivores, which means domestic dogs, wolves, foxes, bears, and badgers, uniquely carry a specialized, light-sensitive molecule called cryptochrome-1 inside the light-receiving cells of their eyes, specifically inside the cells that detect blue and ultraviolet light. Cats do not have this. Lions do not. Tigers do not. Something in the dog's lineage kept this molecule, polished it, and placed it right at the front of the eye, in the exact position to act as a sensory receptor for the magnetic field. Here is how it works, and try to stay with this, because what happens next is genuinely astonishing. A photon of blue light enters the dog's eye. It strikes this cryptochrome molecule. That burst of energy causes a single electron to jump across the molecule and separate from its partner. Two lonely, unstable electrons, born from the same event, separated. And because they were born together, they are quantumly entangled. Their fates are still linked across the space between them. These two electrons do not sit still. They vibrate. They flip back and forth between two different states millions of times every second. One state where their spins point in opposite directions, one where they point the same way. And this vibration is so delicate, so perfectly balanced, that it is incredibly sensitive to outside forces. This is where the Earth's magnetic field steps in. The planet's magnetic field is just strong enough, at just the right frequency, to tilt that vibration, to lean the balance slightly toward one state over the other. And each state produces a completely different chemical output. One collapses quietly, leaving no trace. The other forces the protein to change shape and fires a signal directly up the optic nerve into the brain. So as your dog turns its head, the angle of the Earth's magnetic lines cutting through the eye shifts. That shift changes the quantum behavior of subatomic particles, and that change cascades up into a real, tangible neurological signal that the brain reads as direction. The dog does not calculate north the way we read a compass. It is more like a feeling, a subtle gradient overlaid across their vision, a sense of the grid of the world woven into the way they perceive space. They do not think the word north, they feel it. The way you feel warmth coming from a fire before you can name the direction of it. Imagine a dog lying on the kitchen floor on a quiet Sunday afternoon. That soft, loose-limbed sleep that dogs fall into when they know everyone they love is nearby. Before they settled, they circled once, maybe twice. They were not doing nothing. They were doing what their DNA has asked them to do for tens of thousands of years. They were finding the grid. They were placing themselves inside it, and then they let go and rested. Now here is something the researchers also suspect. The quantum compass in the eye may not be working alone. Deep in the tissue around the dog's face and skull, scientists believe there may be microscopic crystals of iron, natural biological magnets, each one tiny enough that thousands could rest on the head of a pin. These crystals physically twist in response to magnetic force, the way a compass needle swings toward north. When the dog turns its head, these crystals pull slightly against the surrounding tissue, and that pull triggers nerve signals of their own. Two systems. One quantum, one physical. One in the light-sensitive cells of the eye, one in the tissue of the face. Together, they may give the dog's brain a complete three-dimensional map of the magnetic world. One system tells them the angle and tilt of the field, the other tells them its raw strength and direction. Together, they create something we do not have a name for in human experience, because no human has ever felt it. Rigel has felt it every morning of his 7-year life. Standing in Joel's yard, spinning slowly in the early light, reading a signal that stretches from the core of the earth up through the soil under his paws, through the quantum machinery of his eye, and into the part of his brain that knows, always, where safety is. But knowing how the compass works still leaves one question unanswered. Why does the dog have to spin to use it? Why can it not simply stand still and feel the north? The answer to that is even more remarkable than the compass itself. Your dog is not lost when it spins. It is calibrating. And the difference between those two things is the difference between confusion and mastery. When you open a map application on your phone and it cannot determine which direction you are facing, a small prompt appears asking you to sweep the phone through the air in a figure 8. That sweeping motion forces the phone's internal sensors to sample the local magnetic environment from multiple angles, filter out the electronic noise, and lock onto a stable direction. Without that movement, the phone is guessing. With it, the phone knows. Your dog's spinning is the biological version of that figure 8. By rotating their body in a full circle, they expose the quantum receptors in their eyes and the physical receptors in their tissue to the complete sweep of the Earth's magnetic gradient. They sample every angle. They filter the noise. And somewhere in the final degrees of that rotation, the signal clicks into focus. The neurological chatter quiets. The grid becomes sharp and clear. And they know exactly where they are on the surface of the planet. Only then, when the instrument is calibrated and the coordinates are locked, does the dog feel safe enough to lower itself into a vulnerable position and go to the bathroom, or settle into sleep. Joel's oldest daughter noticed once that Rigel always seems to pause for a fraction of a second right before he stops spinning. Just a small stillness, like something clicked. She described it to her dad that night. Joel did not have an explanation for her then. He does now. That pause is the moment the compass locks on. But the spinning in the backyard is only the most visible piece of this story. Because researchers wanted to know what happens when a dog is not safely inside a yard. What happens when a dog is lost in the wilderness, miles from home, with no path back? In 2020, a team of researchers published a study in the journal eLife that tracked 27 hunting dogs through dense forests across 62 different locations. The dogs were equipped with GPS collars and cameras. They were allowed to chase game freely, sometimes running deep into completely unfamiliar territory, winding and chaotic, nose to the ground, following instinct wherever it led. And then the chase ended. The dog was far from the owner, the forest was thick, the scent trails were winding, and the dog had to find its way home. Two strategies emerged. The first one we expected. About 59% of the time, the dogs simply turned around and retraced their own outbound scent trail. Reliable, but slow. It meant following every unnecessary curve and doubling back on every winding detour. But about 33% of the time, something different happened. The dog completely abandoned its own scent trail. Instead, it struck out in a new direction, a direct line, a shortcut through completely unfamiliar forest, straight toward the owner. And before every single one of those shortcuts, before the dog took a single step toward home, there was a moment. A brief, deliberate sprint of about 20 meters, not toward the owner, not following a scent, but running along the north-south geomagnetic axis. A compass run. The dogs that performed this run, that took those 20 meters to synchronize their internal map with the planet's magnetic grid before turning toward home, arrived significantly faster and more accurately than those who did not. The magnetic alignment flushed the navigational errors out of the system. It reset the internal map. And then the dog turned, knowing exactly where home was, and ran. There is something in that image that is hard to fully hold. A dog alone in a dense forest it has never been inside before, with no landmarks and no trail, pausing to align itself with the magnetic field of the earth, and then running straight home to the person who loves it. That is not instinct in the way we usually mean the word. That is devotion made physical. That is love expressed in the language of physics. But to understand why a modern dog still carries this ancient, astonishing ability inside a safe suburban yard surrounded by wooden fences, we have to go much further back. All the way back to a time before fences, before yards, before anyone had ever heard the word domestic. Before there were dogs, there were wolves. And before wolves became companions, they were survivors. And survival, for a wolf, meant one thing above everything else. Never get lost. Imagine a wolf pack in the late Pleistocene, somewhere in the vast frozen north, moving across a snow-covered plain at the edge of a storm. No landmarks, the horizon white and featureless in every direction. 30 miles to cover before the night. The pack is the warmth. The pack is the hunt. The pack is the only reason any of them are still alive. To lose the pack in that environment was not an inconvenience. It was a death sentence. Separation meant starvation. It meant freezing. It meant facing predators alone that no single wolf could survive. And yet, these animals still had to stop. To rest, to sleep, to defecate. Moments of profound vulnerability, when the body is compromised and the attention is fractured, when running at full speed in any direction becomes suddenly, terrifyingly impossible. Think about what those moments demanded. The animal stops. It becomes still. It becomes exposed. And if something comes out of that featureless white horizon, it has to move, instantly, without hesitation, in the right direction. The spinning was never about grass. It was never about insects or scent marking. It was a survival ritual. It was the animal locking in its coordinates before it lowered its guard. It was saying, silently and precisely, I know where I am. I know where the pack is, and if anything happens while I am vulnerable, I already know the direction home. That is the behavior Rigel carries in his body. That is what he is doing in Joel's yard every morning before the kids wake up. On some level that goes deeper than thought, he is checking the grid. He is making sure he knows where he is. He is making sure he knows where his people are. And here is the part that may quietly break you open a little. Dogs are not just social animals who tolerate human company. They are animals who have co-evolved alongside human beings for tens of thousands of generations, shaped by that relationship from the inside out. The human is not just a resource to a dog. The human is the pack. The human is the anchor. The human is what the compass points toward. Every time your dog circles the kitchen floor before settling, every time they spin in the backyard before squatting, they are running a survival check that their DNA has been running since before there were houses, since before there were cities, since before there were words for any of this. They are asking the oldest question any social creature can ask. If something goes wrong right now, do I know how to get back to you? And every spin is the answer. Yes, I know exactly where you are. There is a sound that dog owners know without being able to describe it. The sound of the leash being picked up. Before the snap of the clasp, before the jingle of the tag, there is something that shifts in the room. A dog that was sleeping raises its head. A tail begins to move. Something in the dog knew before any of your movements were complete that the walk was about to happen, that their person was about to take them somewhere, that the world was about to expand. They do not wait for confirmation. They already know. That knowing runs deeper than hearing. It is woven through everything they are. Joel is not a man who talks much about feelings. He is the kind of person who refills your coffee before you know it is empty, who leaves the porch light on even when he is home because he does not like anyone arriving in the dark. He has 2 kids who need him to be steady, and so he is steady every day, even on the days when steady is incredibly hard. He does not have a lot of room for softness, but there are some mornings when the coffee is brewing and the house is still quiet, and Rigel is out in the yard doing his slow, private ceremony in the early light, that Joel watches through the glass door and feels something he cannot name. Something like gratitude or recognition, or both. Something like being seen. He does not know yet that Rigel is pointing his spine at the center of the planet's magnetic grid and running a calculation that ends with Joel's exact coordinates. He does not know that every spin is Rigel's way of saying, no matter what, I know how to find you. But he feels it. He always has. And that, finally, brings us home. Every evening, Rigel goes through his ritual one last time. The kids are in bed, the house is quiet. Joel opens the back door, and Rigel steps out into the dark yard, and the spinning begins. Slow, deliberate, the same as it was this morning, the same as it was when Rigel was a puppy, and Joel had not yet fully understood how much he needed this dog. The same as it was on the hard days and the quiet days, and the days that somehow became both at once. Rigel finds the axis. That invisible click in the dark. He circles once more, lowers himself into the grass, and looks back at the open door where Joel is standing. They watch each other for a moment. That is the whole scene. That is all of it. And somehow it contains everything. Here is something worth sitting with tonight. Your life stretches across decades of memories and griefs and small joys and long chapters you are still in the middle of. You have a past. You have a future. You have 100 different contexts for who you are. Your dog has one context, one world, one center of gravity. And that center of gravity is you. Not the house, not the yard, not the food bowl or the favorite toy. You. Your dog's entire universe fits inside the space you occupy. Every morning they wake up, the first thing they do, consciously or not, is locate you. Every evening they settle in the direction of you. They are always, always, always finding their way back. And they will not always be able to. There is no gentle way to carry this truth, so I will just hold it carefully and hand it to you. The time you have is shorter than you want it to be, and it is happening right now. Right now, in this moment, while you are here and they are here, and the evening is doing whatever the evening is doing outside your window. So in the next 60 seconds, I want you to do something. Not tomorrow, not after this video ends and you get back to everything else you need to do. Right now. Go to where your dog is. Sit on the floor with them if you can. Place your hand flat against their side and breathe slowly. Research actually suggests that dogs will begin to match your breath within a few minutes. That is not a trick. That is a conversation. Let them find your rhythm. Let them remind you that you are someone's entire world. Let that land. Really let it land. I want to ask you something. What is the most surprising or ordinary thing your dog does that you have never fully understood until now? Tell me in the comments. I read them. I want to know. If you see your dog the way dogs deserve to be seen, which I think you do, or you would not still be here, this channel exists for you. Every video we make is an attempt to tell the truth about the creatures who have given us everything. Subscribe and you will never miss one. And next time, we are going to talk about something that happens the moment you walk back through the door after a long day. What your dog smells on you. What they know. What they feel. Before you have said a single word. Before you have even taken off your shoes. You have no idea what they already know about how your day went, and finding out might change the way you come home.